Hello and welcome to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, joined as per usual by my co-host, Kim Kalunian of 12 News. Kim, how are we doing today?
I'm so great, Eli, because I'm extra excited about our guest today.
I know, we have a very exciting show for you today because we are bringing on the very one and only Steve Klamkin, a longtime reporter, anchor, host, you name it, he's done it. Steve, welcome to Behind the Story.
Thanks very much, Eli. I appreciate you asking me. I'm unaccustomed to being the story.
That's right.
I know, this is kind of a unique opportunity with this show that we get, really an opportunity to talk to people that generally viewers or readers often are only just seeing the name or the voice. And you, Steve, have had a long career in radio. But I thought maybe what would be fun is you were telling me before the show that it wasn't radio, in fact, that you actually wanted to get into initially.
I started out hoping to get into photojournalism. I was big into cameras, and I've returned to that now. But I started out, I went to Boston University thinking I would get into photojournalism, but two things conspired against me. One was Life magazine folded, and Life magazine was essentially the 800-pound gorilla in the photojournalism industry. And when they folded, pretty much every other magazine followed suit. And the second was my cameras were stolen out of my dorm room. So I was in the School of Communication. It was called School of Communications at Boston University at the time. And little did I know, they had a student-run radio station that at the time was displaced because of a building renovation. So they were in a building next to the communications school and ran a wire from one window to the next to get their signal out because they broadcast only on campus. And I discovered radio and never looked back.
And
it's so
we're
much
glad.
fun.
We're glad you never looked back.
I'm glad. I had a great fun doing it. And I felt I had a great career, 50 years basically, in broadcast journalism.
It's pretty incredible because, as Eli mentioned, with this show, people might recognize the journalist's byline or, in your case, their voice. So can you give us the famous tag?
Sure. Steve Klamkin, WPRI News.
It's so iconic, Steve.
Or I should say no longer with WPRI.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm wondering, how you develop your sound, your voice, your tag. How did it all come together?
Well, I don't have a big booming voice. I never have had. And it just happened. The sign-off from my stories over the years, it just happened, and I never gave it a thought. And people started saying it back to me. Steve Klamkin, WPRI. And I was, I guess it's a thing. Well, come to find out, it's a thing. People enjoyed it, enjoyed hearing it. I hear it a lot. And I've been recognized by my voice. Was sitting in PPAC one night before the show talking to my wife, and a woman turns around and says, "You're on the radio, aren't you?"
That is such
Steve
a funny
Klamkin.
thing.
Yeah, so that was only a couple of years ago. So, yeah, it's been going on.
And you mentioned, you've been doing this for decades now. You said radio is fun. What makes radio so fun versus other forms of media?
It's just, I can't compare, not having been in TV,
Sure.
not really writing for, is it fun writing for a newspaper? You've done that.
I assume. I haven't done it in a long time,
Right.
but when I was doing it, yes, it was fun. I like media in
Listen,
general, but
yeah, you get to go out and talk to people, and was the appeal for me.
Yeah.
Is to get to go out and talk to people about their lives and tell their stories. It's been terrific. Nothing compares with it. Anybody who loves what they do feels that they're not working. They say, you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. That's how I've felt. Last year, I was in the car wash talking to the guy who owns it, who I've known for some years, and he said, I told him I was, at the time, 69 years old. He says, "And you're still working?" I said, "Man, I love what I do. I don't want to ever give it up." And he says, "You could be traveling." And I said, "Yeah, but I'm having fun. I'm still enjoying what I'm doing." Unfortunately, I developed some health issues in just about a year ago. And it affected my voice. I couldn't speak.
wow.
And I thought, well, that's it for my career, But I was coming back. I was, once we had a diagnosis, I was taking medication. I was recovering, and I got my voice back. I was on the comeback trail. So, one thing led to another, and now I'm retired.
Well, we're glad that you got your voice
Semi-retired.
back.
Semi-retired, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to talk a little bit about process, and we are very happy you're back, as Kim
Yes.
said. But I want to talk a little bit about process because, and this is getting a little bit into how the sausage is made in journalism. But
Well, that's, quote, behind
the story,
Yeah.
what we're getting into here. But, when there's a big event or there's a press conference or there's some news gathering that's happening, we all, as journalists, go there to see what's happening. And, journalists worth their salt will prepare some questions. And I remember first coming to this region to start reporting, and I would think of, 15 questions that I would want to get through in going to a news event. And then I get there, and Steve would ask the first question, and that was it. That was the sound, that was the quote, that was the thing. So I'm curious, just when you're, going into a news event where there will be questions asked, what is your process in thinking about what you're going to ask that person that you need the answer from?
You're going to laugh. Very seldom will I formulate questions in advance.
Wow.
And I think, basically, I think listening is the best way to figure out how you're going to carry on a conversation or to pose questions. We do a lot of news conferences, as you say, and I'll try to key in on what I think are the main points, the important parts. What do I, as a listener, want to know coming out of this news, you say news conference or news event, and what do I think people would want to know about? And so that's what I'll try to form a question and go from there.
And the turnaround with radio was always very fast because there was a newscast when we were working together every half hour back at the station. And one of the things that always amazed me about you, Steve, was that the news conference would finish, you would go over with your Marantz, and you would just riff into the microphone, and it would be on air like 2 minutes later.
Sometimes I'd riff, but most times I'd write.
Oh.
And I'd be writing while we're doing the news conference.
Okay,
Wow.
this is a secret I
But
didn't know.
the thing is, I'm doing 30-second stories and mapping out where are the sound bites in what the person just said that, if we just say a news conference, say it's the governor or whomever, what are the key takeaways from this,
Sure.
and what am I going to use to construct that story? Most times the story will stand up for the next day even, because they're short.
Yeah.
You folks have to fill a couple of minutes for a story. Me,
Which feels short, too.
30 to 45 seconds is the norm, because that's half a newscast,
That's right.
So that's basically how we would construct the story, and step away and read it into the phone or
right.
record it into my recorder and feed it back.
We'll talk about learning how to write concisely. He's the wizard at it.
He is.
We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to explore some of Steve's biggest stories, along with what he's up to in semi-retirement. Stick with us. Hello and welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, here with my co-host, Kim Kalunian, and we are talking to longtime broadcast journalist, Steve Klamkin. Kim, take it away.
Well, Steve, you mentioned earlier you had been doing this for decades, and we often talk about on this show how Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts is such a news-rich place to cover. There's really nowhere else like it. And so I'm wondering, as you look back on your career and all those decades spent out in the field, what were some of the wildest, most memorable things that you covered?
I did a lot of trials, and that was very interesting to me. I started out, I was a DJ for 6 months before, in Vermont, of all places, before.
My home state.
There you go.
Yep.
In Rutland.
Ah,
That's where I was.
Rut Vegas, we used to call it.
So that was
the
fun.
backstory there, I guess.
But I was bitten by the news bug always, and I came into Fall River, a radio station in Fall River, WSAR, which is one of the oldest stations in the country, doing the news. And early on there, I covered the a fire in the Notre Dame church, which was a huge conflagration, and I can remember walking through the next day getting the walkthrough with the fire chief and feeling the hot embers under our feet. Unbelievable. The big trial that I covered was when I went on to New Bedford and covered the Big Dan's gang rape trial. 5 men were tried for raping a woman on a pool table in a bar in New Bedford called Big Dan's, made into a movie starring Jodie Foster.
Wow.
And but we covered the trial, which was 2 simultaneous trial. 2 men were tried separately, 3 and 2. There were 2 juries sitting simultaneously. It happened the trial was held in Fall River. And I could roll out of bed and be there within 5 minutes. And this went on for weeks, and it was carried. It was one of the first trials carried on live on cable television.
Sure.
It was in the fledgling days of CNN. So from there, I covered a lot of trials. Buddy Cience's trial, for example.
Well, I want to ask you about that because that was Plunder Dome, right?
Yeah.
That was so the investigation into former Providence Mayor Buddy Cience. I believe he was indicted in 2001 or 2002. And the famous line, of course, no stains on this jacket. What was that like? Because this is predating the time that Kim and I were here, of course, reporting on the ground.
It was intense focus on this trial. It really led the news for weeks, and the trial went for several months. We started in the snow and ended in the June.
Wow.
I think it went from, I want to say April to June. 11 days of jury deliberations, and he was acquitted on all but one charge, which was a federal racketeering charge, RICO, they call it, and went away for the better part of 4 years to Fort Dix in New Jersey. But the trial itself was just a constant cast of characters, of city characters who had done business with the city, talked about misdeeds. What essentially did him in was a video of his administration director taking cash in an envelope from an FBI plant,
Right.
who was a businessman locally. So as a trial, it was quite spectacular, but it was held in federal court. Didn't have those sound bites.
Right.
There are no cameras and no microphones allowed in the federal courts. So we had to tell the story. So they gave me a little more time. I could take about a minute to tell the story. But would try to have something new at each break in the case. So you'd get a morning break, lunch break, afternoon break, and so forth. So you try to update and refresh the story throughout the course of the day.
Buddy was such a sought machine. I mean, a quote machine.
Quote machine, absolutely.
And you know, of all the people that you covered over the years, does he stand out as maybe one of the people that gave the most concise
Certainly
quotes?
one of the most colorful characters that I'd ever covered, and probably ask anybody who was here at the time, they'll probably tell you the same thing. He had a gift of gab, and we used to say we were operating on buddy time. He'd call a news conference never before 10:30 in the morning, and he would eventually show up because he enjoyed the nightlife, I guess.
And then you ended up being co-workers, working on opposite sides of the glass of the same building.
How strange was that? Buddy came into radio twice. He went away. But when he went away, finally, he used to call it his federally subsidized gated community, was the federal prison at Fort Dix, New Jersey. But when he came out, I remember he went to a halfway house up in Boston, and then came back here, and in short order came to work for the radio station. And yeah, we were colleagues for maybe 4 or 5 years until he ran for mayor once again, not knowing his days were numbered. He passed away. He lost that race and passed away within months, really, of that election.
I want to take a detour away from news, if you don't mind, because we have a shared love of jazz.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to ask you about jazz and why you fell in love with it. And you go to the Jazz Fest every year. You're always there interviewing artists and taking pictures. Where does that love come from?
I want to say I grew up in the 70s and enjoyed bands like Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then I discovered Miles Davis and the whole harder jazz scene, harder, I say more intense and more, I'm not saying that Chicago was, I heard them last night on a show. I always enjoyed that kind of music. It's a different beat. and you find that you're simpatico with it.
Yeah.
And I went to the jazz festival in Newport once in the mid '80s, and loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Sarah Vaughan was there. But life happens, and you raise a family, and you don't get to these things. Just not paying attention. So finally, at one point in the early 2000s, maybe about 2009 or 2010, my station had tickets. You want to go to the Newport Jazz Festival? Sure, I said. And I said, I love this. How do I get to go here on a regular basis and cover it for the station? And that's what I wound up doing. I loved it. Enjoy covering the artists, talking to some of them, interviewing the people who go. And then 5 years into that, they have the Newport Folk Festival a week before that in the same place at Fort Adams. And I said, I want to see how the other half lives. And I love that too. So it's really broadened my appreciation and love of music into all different spheres. If you had told me that I'd enjoy a bluegrass mandolin player a couple of years ago, I'd say, you're crazy. But Sierra Hull is her name. She's fabulous. And it's just good musicianship, good music, just really turns me on.
All right, we only have about a minute left, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about what you're up to these days. You said that you're semi-retired, but what exactly are you up to, Steve?
Just in the last few weeks, I've started doing some work with Latino Public Radio based here in Providence, and they are an online presence. They're no longer a radio outlet, but they retain the name. And I didn't realize it'd be as much video as there is, so I'm doing a lot of video interviews, short interviews, maybe 10 minutes to half an hour. So I had 3 of them this morning. One of them was Congressman Magaziner, and that went better part of a half an hour. So the fellow who runs it is Reynaldo Almonte is very politically oriented. He does his political barbecue every election cycle and has all the politicians into his backyard to talk about the campaigns. And so I've started working with him, and it's been great fun.
All right. Well, that is unfortunately all the time that we have with you, Steve. For folks who want to learn more, they can go catch him over at Latino Public Radio. And for anything, go ahead, Steve.
LPRnews.org.
LPR News. There you have it. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the stories we wish we wrote. Stick with us. Hello and welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, joined by my co-host, Kim Kalunian. And Kim, we're entering into the final segment of our show, The Stories We Wish We Wrote, where we focus on other great reporting that's happened around the region and that we might be envious of.
A little bit.
I'm going to start because I always give the co-host the start, and I never get time to talk about mine. But my story that I really liked this week was the Amazon effect. Warehouse looms over Johnston, but will it fulfill economic promise? By Matthew McNulty of Providence Business News. The story is really good. It was their cover story. And, Providence Business News, where I used to work for 3 years, does a great job at sort of stepping back from something that we at Channel 12 might cover the bits and pieces of, but this really looks at the overarching issue at hand and explores it deeply. And so Matt did a great job, going in and looking at, okay, what did they promise? 1,500 jobs, and where are they now? And will they be reaching those goals? And he talked to a lot of people. He talked to other businesses that will be affected by it. He talked to other employers who might be affected by them hiring people. Really good, in-depth, long reporting that Matt did, and on a really important topic.
Yeah, like you say, Eli, it's so important to zoom out and sort of take stock of a big sort of day of story like that. We cover the ribbon cutting, we cover the announcement, we cover the day it finally opens, but sometimes we don't take that step back like Matt did here. So
yeah, and I'm really excited about your first one this week.
Oh, yes, me too.
Yeah, take it away.
I will say I cried a little bit watching this. It was so sweet.
I don't blame you.
It was so sweet. It's called Meet the Providence Fifth Graders Running Their Own Newsroom. This is by Ben Burke over at Ocean State Media, and these students at Alfred Lima Elementary School are doing this librarian-run news outlet where they go through the school and they interview fellow students and teachers, but also Governor Dan McKee and Providence Mayor Brett Smiley. And Ben interviews these kids about why it matters to them to have this kind of access and to develop these kind of skills. And they get it. They get why journalism matters. They get why it's fun and why it's exciting. I'm going to get misty again. It's so good.
Well, and you're leaving out the fact that you made a cameo in the
which
piece
I didn't
yourself.
know as I was watching it, and then there I was, which made it even more special. So thanks for the shout out, Ben. But yeah.
The kids interviewed Providence Mayor Brett Smiley, who then promptly came on to Kim's 4 o'clock Q&A, question and answer, in her 4 o'clock show. And he actually brought it up, and he was saying, I was kind of grilled over there. I don't think he was expected for the preparedness of the 5th graders.
I remember that day because he was so excited. He was like, I have to talk about this. And I was like, great, let's do it.
I know. It's fun to see, too, that they're getting exposure to that at a young age because you don't see a ton of media literacy, let alone, what it is to actually put together a story and ask questions.
Yes, I remember having a similar opportunity when I was in elementary school and I got to write a column for the Warwick Beacon. I ended up working there one day. So
there you go. One of them did say that they wanted to be a doctor, but if that didn't work out, they wanted to be a journalist. I think that was what they said.
Either way.
Yeah.
Either way, go for it.
If you want to make some money, go with the doctor.
Yeah.
I have to give a shout out to our colleague and someone you know quite well, your husband, Ted Nisi. He landed just a huge interview with former Fall River Mayor Will Flanagan, who of course was attacked randomly on the street, stabbed multiple times. And the first interview, he's been recovering in the hospital. The first interview that he's done publicly now is with Ted. They sat down, and it's a really gripping interview. We're taping this midday on Wednesday. I get the benefit of seeing it ahead of time. But he really talks about sort of the issue of random attacks, and he actually calls on the president to take a look at getting people who are mentally ill and dangerous off of the streets. It's a really tough interview, and also you just see him. He really is still recovering, and the damage is quite clear. We're all happy, of course, that he is okay.
Of course, yeah. And, I'm looking forward to seeing Ted's entire piece, and I wish Will a very speedy recovery.
All right. Well, that is all the time that we have. Kim has another one, but we'll throw it up on the website.
Yes.
This episode and any other episode will be on our website at WPRI.com. This is also now a podcast, so you can go check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And next week, of course, we'll have another journalist on to talk about what they're doing. But for now, for Kim Kalunian, I'm Eli Sherman. Thank you so much for watching Behind the Story.